everyone. Welcome back to Basically Doctors. Today, we're going to have our first guest on our podcast. So I'm going to hand it over to Anna to give a brief introduction.
All right. So I'm going to give a brief introduction on Aidan because I think it will help us all orient ourselves into who Aidan is. You might be familiar with Aidan from some of his podcast work, both on the Synthesis Workshop and Under the Scope, I want to say. Is that correct?
That is right. Recently merged.
They recently merged. Okay, see, breaking news.
Yeah,
they recently merged.
Breaking news. Yeah. I basically Underscope is kind of dead now. I basically just moved everything over to Synthesis Workshop. So all the previous episodes are still like on my YouTube channel, but moving forward, it's completely through Synthesis Workshop. So yeah.
All right, everybody, make sure that you guys follow Synthesis Workshop if you haven't already. Aidan's done some really awesome work in terms of interviewing, faculty members as well as graduate students. And I think he has some really awesome content for you all to check out. So a little bit about Aidan's background that I'm just learning as I go, because I want this to be as much of a surprise it is for me as it is for everybody else. Aidan got his bachelor's degree at Widener University. Let's fingers crossed that I said that correctly. His activities and societies at the university include being a part of Tau Kappa Epsilon, the IFC president, CREW student orientation leader, and he was a part of the chemistry club. So we're seeing a lot of like activity, just it's an active member of society, specifically chemistry society in his university days or in his uni days. And now he's currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Houston. And I've been told that he's advanced candidacy.
You're so New York.
Yes, you just said Houston. That's crazy.
It's Houston. Okay, I'm sorry. As I've been told, I'm sorry. I'm getting detailed live updates that it is in fact Houston. So he is doing a doctor of philosophy or pursuing a doctor of philosophy at University of Houston in chemistry. And Aidan's had a lot of experience in both, obviously in scientific or science communication, which we're really excited to talk to him about today. If you're very curious about any of his other activities, feel free to stalk him on LinkedIn the way that I did. Oh, and I should mention, he is studying at the University of Houston right now in the Caro group.
Yeah.
All right.
Full time.
Have I missed anything, Aidan? Would you like to add anything that I've missed?
One thing I will add is that I'm actually also, they don't have a chapter here in Houston, but I don't know if you guys know of Alpha Chi Sigma, which is a professional chemistry fraternity. I'm also in that.
Yeah.
I don't have a chapter in Houston, but I'd love to get reacquainted with that because I think that's a huge, for all the viewers out there, like if you have a Alpha Chi Sigma chapter, I would definitely recommend joining it. It's a professional chemistry fraternity. So.
Nina's a sorority girl, so she can speak to this.
I was not in the chemistry fraternity. I don't even know if we had one, but I was a Theta actually, and so that is my familiarity with Greek life.
What's the full
Kappa Alpha Theta?
Kappa Alpha Theta. Okay, I didn't have that have that chapter, but all right. Greek life is extremely fun. I had a great time.
It was fun. Yeah, I loved being in a sorority. It was very fun. I don't know if we had the chemistry fraternity, but a lot of people in our grad school were in the whatever it's called, chemistry fraternity.
Alpha Chi Sigma or ACS? Or
I think so.
Alpha Chi Sigma, I believe, was the one that a lot of people, at least that's the one that was familiar to me. Not that I'm the expert because I went to NYU and Greek life is basically dead there. So it's not. I know if anybody who is listening who's interacted with NYU and they're like, Anna, you're such a liar. There's definitely Greek life and whatever. Like, I know, but it's not the same. It's not the same, and it's not the same. So, don't worry about it.
But it's also not the same at UCSD. UCSD is also not like real Greek life, but that's a hot take. Anyway,
these are spicy takes. I don't know the Greek life of those two universities, but if I recommend it for people.
Me too.
I do too. I actually do now. When I was at NYU, I was very anti-Greek life in the sense that I was like, why would you need to be a part of a group like that? But having entered grad school, Nina actually brought up in our first year actually, that a lot of our first year reminded her of Greek life, and she was very accustomed to certain customs, I would say, that we adopted in grad school because of her experiences in Greek life. Do you want to share anything about that, Nina?
I mean, I just said that rotations felt like recruitment. That was all, really. And honestly, that it just feels the same it's like honestly more like Groundhog Day, because every year you have the same pieces. Like you have the rotations and recruitment, visitation, all of those things. And like, you're always having to be on your A game, just like in sorority recruitment.
I was gonna say a lot of people don't know this, people who aren't in Greek life. I mean, the recruitment for fraternities and sororities is extremely different. The CPC ruling is like, it's really formalized, and it's just they're just extremely different, I think, for fraternities and sororities. But I still am grateful for my experience in fraternity life. I think one of the benefits to it is how to be like sociable. Like I think a lot of like how to speak to people, and and I think networking is kind of overplayed, because but like it's how you, like anything in life, you get out what you put into it. But like I think how to behave yourself in a professional setting is something that you actually get out of Greek life that people aren't really aware of. So
you are 100% correct. Like I completely agree with you. But also, you said you were president, right?
Yeah, I was president of my fraternity, but also the president of the IFC. So I oversaw like all the fraternity, all the Greek life. Saw a lot of things.
Well, and that's so useful for professional, like to become more professional too, because you learn how you're supposed to run a group. So I was on exec in my sorority as well. And I felt like it was super valuable for coming into grad school and knowing how to act professionally. And I feel like Anna did not have as much experience in that regard.
Well, I learned things on the fly.
Yeah.
But I was going to say just really quickly that it does come across for you, Aidan, like the way that you, I think, talk. It makes a lot of sense now why you're able to carry, like, I think yourself the way you do in both your podcast as well as just interacting with you. Like, I feel like you're just very good at choosing your words and constructing sentences. I know that's kind of a given, guys, but like for someone like me, it's kind of hard. And so does Nina. Nina was always somebody who I felt was very well spoken.
Wow, thank you. Anyway, what were you going to say?
The only thing I was going to say is like very grateful for how to speak to like school administration, because I was speaking with them like all the time, and so I had a direct line to like the dean of students. So just very grateful for that opportunity. I'm still repaying that now, and so hope to carry through that throughout my life, really, being Greek life. So yeah,
awesome. So, I mean, just kind of like to get things started in terms of what we wanted to do on this episode, like I was really curious because on our first episode, Nina and I kind of shared a little bit about our journeys to chemistry. And I'm sure you've done this on one of your previous podcasts, but like, we just wanted to hear from you, like, again, maybe what brought you into chemistry, like what your journey was with chemistry, because it is a huge decision to just go to grad school, and also like now you're advanced to candidacy, so you're basically almost there. You're basically there, that in my opinion anyway. So like, can you speak to us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, sure. So coming up through high school, I took AP Chem. I remember so I actually have an undergraduate degree. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and Chemistry. And so originally I went to university as a chemical engineering major, like full time. Like I didn't really do anything with chemistry. I remember taking AP Chem in high school, and man, this is another conversation for another day, but how hard that class was. Like, and that like AP Chem was so difficult for no reason. It was so hard. And like, I'm usually pretty good academically, but like, I remember that AP Chem test. I didn't even take it. Like, I was like, fuck this. I didn't want to take the AP Chem test. Like, I'm like, whatever. So anyway, fast forward, I go to university. I'm in chemical engineering. And one of the great things about, my university, they actually do offer like dual degrees. So that opportunity arose to me when I took, like everyone else, I suppose. I was doing undergraduate research after my sophomore year with my advisor who taught the organic chemistry class. So I was really exposed to organic chemistry, obviously like everyone else, and just fell in love with it. It's really as simple as that. And so I did undergraduate research with Professor Lloyd Baston at Wider University for a while, doing like organic synthesis, nothing really special, but it's enough for like an undergraduate to kind of get involved. And I think, those opportunities I'm extremely grateful for now. And then, pursued the dual degree in chemical engineering and chemistry. And then it got to my senior year. I didn't really want to go into work yet. I was finding myself kind of like I didn't really have a grand plan here, but I remember sitting in the office with my advisor, and he was like, "Well, what are you doing next?" I was like, "I don't know, man. I'm going with the flow." He said, "What do you think I should do?" And I was like, you should look into graduate school." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Isn't that kind of a lot of money?" He's like, "No, they'll actually pay you to go to school. Obviously it's a lot of hard work, but like, tuition's covered." I was like, "All right, that sounds really cool." And so I was like, "All right, I guess I'll go to graduate school." And it kind of clicked. I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll just go to graduate school." And so I applied. I only applied to 2 schools. I only applied to the Florida Institute of Technology in Houston. And
Wow.
those are the only 2 schools I applied to, mostly because they didn't have to take the GRE. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys take the GRE, but
We
yeah.
did.
Okay.
There weren't that many schools that didn't in our day.
Yeah.
Back in our day. There weren't as many schools that allowed us not to take the GRE, so it was overall more beneficial to have it as opposed to not. And since then, there's been a huge movement, obviously, to for schools to go away from that and make it more optional, which is really appreciated.
Yeah, because when I applied, it was like fall of 2020, so this is like peak COVID. Well,
no.
So, which, by the way, I didn't get to do any of the visitation stuff that everyone got to do. I didn't get to do that shit. So I don't want to.
Sucks.
Like, I didn't get to do any of that stuff. So I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear people complain about that.
Okay.
Is what it is now.
No, that sucks. Anyway, okay.
Just another thing that Corona took away from us.
I know, man. I still can't believe that happened. Honestly, I still can't believe that was like 4 years ago. Yeah, so I applied to Florida Tech and Houston, and I guess the reason I applied to those schools was, one, no GRE, but also I thought about it for a second. I'm kind of the opposite of how people choose graduate school. A lot of people like look into like professors and research. The first thing I look for was like, okay, what city would I want to live in my mid-20s? And I was like, where can we have a lot of fun? And Florida Tech is in Melbourne, Florida, which is extremely beautiful. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but like very beautiful city, very beautiful campus, like great for mid-20s. And then Houston, I visited Houston. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Habitat for Humanity. Are you guys familiar with that organization?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for people that don't know, basically you build houses for people that maybe their house was taken away in like a storm, or maybe they're financially struggling, and so it's just a really good organization. And I had the opportunity to do that in college, and I went to Nashville and I went to Houston. And so when I did that in Houston, I fell in love with the city, and I was like, yeah, I could see myself living here. And so fast forward back, I applied at graduate school in Houston. I didn't know a lick. I didn't know one lick any of the professors here. I didn't know what research was going on here, but I had the good feeling. I had a good vibe. So, and it worked out really well for me. Really well. I don't really recommend doing this for doing it my way, but if you kind of have a nonchalant, go with the flow type attitude like me, then I would have made the best wherever I went. So it worked out for me here in Houston. But yeah, that's basically my journey up until now.
That's crazy. I can't imagine. I mean, to be honest, like when I was looking through websites trying to find professors, I didn't really know what I was looking for, really. So I might as well have just thrown a dart, but like at a map or whatever. But that is wild. So you just came in at like day one, like, okay, well, who are you guys?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I will say this.
It?
I did my due diligence. Yeah. Like I did want to get into Houston. So I reached out to I reached out to Rob Camino, Jeremy May. And like I spoke with them on Zoom about the research. So I did my due diligence in that sense. But yeah, other than that though, like I didn't know, like it's funny when you graduate, and you guys speak on this too. When you graduate undergraduate, you think you have I mean, it is a big accomplishment, don't get me wrong. And it's like you feel like you're on top of the world, and then you enter graduate school and it's like, wow, you don't know shit yet. Like honestly, like yeah, so very yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to be here in Houston. Really, I didn't know Brad was going to be here in Houston. So I mean, the ducks fall right in place for me. I got really lucky in that sense, so I'm very grateful for that. So I know a lot of people don't really have that kind of experience like I do, but yeah, we're here now, living it.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to add, because we didn't actually get to this in our previous episode about, applying to grad school. It's that, like, or selecting a advisor, actually, is that sometimes moves happen, and, like,
Yeah.
you might be going somewhere and a new professor is either joining, or the professor you really wanted to work for is leaving, and those situations will come up. So I know students who've had to leave in the middle of their, PhD because their professor ended up going to a different institution. Sometimes those moves were, like, really embraced, sometimes those were not. So that's always, I think, something to keep in mind. I appreciate your perspective, because it's easy for Nina and I to talk now that we've, like, reflected on how the best approach was, but in practice, we were super chaotic. Like, we were way more chaotic than we're advising.
Because you're right. At undergrad, you had no idea what you're doing, no idea what the right steps are or how to approach things. But that's kind of like the point of why we wanted to start the podcast, because it's like providing resources to people who have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
So actually, that leads me to my question for you, which is, do you want to tell us why you decided to start your podcast, and also explain what happened to lead you to merge your the podcasts?
Sure. So this is, I guess, one of the silver linings out of COVID was that fall of 2020. That's when I put my first episode out. It was such a stupid episode. It was such a stupid episode. Like, it was literally like me in my college house, because I was a senior at the time. I was a senior in undergrad, and I was 20 years old. It's funny because my roommates, I live with 4 other guys in this really big house. I'm grateful for 419. It was a super good time. But anyway, my roommates had bought a microphone because they started a rap album, so they had this microphone, and I was like, by the way, all 3 albums are on Spotify right now. I am featured on one of the albums, the second album. But
wow, okay,
plug,
we'll link it.
Album plug,
we'll link it.
album plug.
It's actually mixed really well for them. But anyway, they had a microphone, and I was like, I'd been through a couple of seminars, like, virtually, but also, like, when I was a junior and sophomore, like, I'd been to a couple of the seminars, and I was like, this is really cool stuff. Someone should just put this on the internet, honestly. Like, there's really no reason why. And so I was like, and you guys can attest this too, there's not really many, like, chemistry podcasts, I would say. There's Farm to Table. Synthesis Workshop has a thing now, but that's kind of more presentery type style. It's not really a podcast type, I would say. And I was like, fuck it. I guess if you want to do something right, do it yourself. So I was like, all right, I'll just start doing it. So it was literally just me in my kitchen with my buddy, and we were just talking, like, for 20 minutes on research. So that's the inception of it. It really wasn't anything deeper than that, and I just put it on the internet. I got some good feedback, and I was like, what, maybe I'll just start pursuing this. And so I just started interviewing faculty and some other of my classmates, and it caught on. And so
wow,
that's the inception of it. It really wasn't this thought out plan. I just started doing it, honestly. I think people ask me, like, about starting podcasts. I'm like, honestly, like, just start. Like, you'll find your voice, honestly. Don't worry about the equipment. Like, I mean, obviously having, like, the best cameras and get a microphone is like $50, something like that. It can be, you have to have a little bit of a startup, but honestly, just start it. That's the biggest first step. Did you know, like, I was looking at this, like, if you put out, like, 10 episodes about, like, you're already in the top 5% podcasters of all time. So it's just like,
wow,
the consistency of it is, like, obviously the biggest thing. So.
Major. And you've been so consistent. I really applaud you. Like, you've been so consistent, even, like, and I mean, when you started your podcast, like, up until now, you have so many episodes. It's crazy. And you've dedicated
in your
so much
first
time.
years of grad school.
Well,
that's wild.
I gotta put a caveat there. I actually didn't record an episode my entire first year of graduate school for the reasons, like, I just didn't have time to do it. Yeah, first year, I just didn't have time. I'll just be blunt. I didn't really have time to, like, do it. I moved to a new city. I was, like, finding my feet. I didn't have time to do it, but I missed doing it. So fall of 2020, I brought it back, and so then that's fall of 2022. I'm sorry, fall of 2022 brought it back, and now I really try to crank out, like, 3 episodes a month. I think that's probably my limit. I think so.
Nice.
Amazing. I mean, you're in grad school still. Like, I know the kind of hours that you're probably pulling. So this is kind of in like 3 episodes a month is already kind of insane, because like Nina and I sometimes struggle with like our schedule, and we're not in grad school. We have 9 to 5 jobs. So very, like this is.
I will say what makes this work, honestly, I have to give I'm very grateful for Brad Caro, my advisor, who like kind of is just like, listen, like, 50, 55 hours a week is probably what you need to be doing. And so as long as you're hitting that, then, I record my episodes on Friday morning, so I'm not even really in lab like all day Friday morning. So it's like, I'm very grateful that he's kind of nonchalant and kind of open about that. So he lets me do this. I know there'd be a lot of PIs out there be like, no, like you need to be in the lab working. So I'm very grateful for Brad in that aspect, letting me do this.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. And just to speak to that also, like there is a flexibility, I think, in grad school, as like you mentioned, like you're not in lab maybe Friday morning for prior commitment. And I feel like there is a built-in flexibility there, because if you do have to like take time away to do something else while you're in grad school, you can kind of make up those hours on the weekends in a way that you can't really do that in a job, for instance. Like, it's unrealistic for my job to go back in on the weekends if I missed hours during the week. So that is a positive of grad school if anybody is thinking about going.
Yeah, I've been extremely grateful for this, honestly. Like I'm literally just talking to people. Like I'm not even really doing anything special. Like I'm literally just talking to people, and like I don't know, people I talk to, just fantastic people, and I've just been grateful to be able to do this, honestly. Like, and so I'll keep doing it.
But I think it's important, because kind of calling back to what you were saying about being in a fraternity and how we were saying that you're able to have these conversations with people because of the social skills that you gained in your fraternity. There are only so many people that are willing to grab a microphone, grab a camera, and record these really important conversations that you're having. And I think part of the reason your PI is probably okay with it is because science communication is so important, and he probably values that and sees that the utility of what you're doing. So I don't know. That's my thought, at least.
Thanks for bringing it back to science communication, Nina. What a great
You're
segue.
So welcome. Wow. Thank you.
Big brain, high IQ plays here.
Well, exactly. She's really doing the Lord's work. But just to finish off Nina's question about you merging your podcast, speak a little bit about that before we dive more into it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know Matthew Horitz, but he's the founder of Synthesis Workshop. They're up to like 10,000 subscribers now on YouTube. And it's about a year ago, he put out a tweet saying that he wants to bring on editorial board members, basically because he was doing everything by himself. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but maybe like it's a video podcast where people present their research, basically. And Matt was doing it all by himself. Like, kudos to him. But he put out a tweet saying like, we're going to start doing, I want to make an editorial board. And so like, I'm taking on like pro bono work basically to edit the videos and help. So we can upload it like once a week. And I decided to do that for him. I edited 2 episodes that are coming out soon. A part of our advanced organic course, which is free content for organic chemistry. But anyway, I was doing that for a while, and then I pitched the idea for him to come on my podcast because I wanted to talk to him about this. Like I was like, how did this start? And that episode's on YouTube, so people can go check that out, and Spotify. But we just got talking. And I was like, like I think it'd be a good idea if we just merged, and I just became a segment of, because like growing a podcast is hard. He already has like 11,000 subscribers, and it's like already like there. And so it's just, like it just kind of made sense for me to just join it, I think. I still have the creative direction, and again, grateful for this. Like I still have the creative direction, so I can interview basically whoever I want. And like any other podcast, so I got to be careful what I say, because now I'm representing Synthesis Workshop. I can't just do things, but I still have the creative direction. I could talk to whoever I want basically, and he's just going to upload it just under Synthesis Workshop now. So that's why we merged. I just think it's easier because I was already doing stuff for Synthesis Workshop, and it was like there's already a big platform here. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just join it, and we can kind of we can start just centralizing everything. I think we also get bigger. I'll probably from my point of view, also probably get a bigger pool. Like I was sitting around 200 subscribers, and like I had a lot of listeners, but I was like, fuck. Like I was like, you know what? Why don't I just join? So it made sense for me. And so And I love working with Matt. He's
and he
a
was
really
on
good
board.
guy. Yeah. We talked about it. He's a really good guy. And now we have really fun episodes coming out. Well, both the podcast wise, but also we're going to try to do, we're going to try to do a total synthesis game show type where it's going to be me and someone else, and we're going to have this is going to be really fun. We have it's in the works, but basically myself and other guests are going to pick a molecule, and we're going to try to make a total synthesis for it, and then we're going to get into
my gosh,
and then we're going to sit down with someone like a like a Ryan Shenvey or Sarah Reisman and be like, okay, would this synthesis actually work? And it'd be like an open discussion about retrosynthetic analysis and total synthesis. Like, would these steps actually work in practice?
That's an awesome idea.
So,
I love
that's so fun. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's great. I think that would be really, really useful.
Yeah, I think it's good to see, like, I just think something that's just been missing is like people actually putting it into practice. Like, we can talk about retrosynthesis, like conceptually how you do it, but I feel like what's missing now is just like, okay, let's get two people and actually do it and actually put these into practice, and let's actually have fun with it, I think. So I'm looking forward to that episode. So that'll be coming out next couple months, I think. But
That's
it's funny.
awesome.
I'm not a total synthesis guy, so this is gonna be. I'm hoping to get grilled here because I don't really, I'm kind of organometallics.
The learning potential. The learning potential is huge because, I mean, yes, you're individually learning, but also I think what's really challenging and something that Nina and I can speak to is like, actually, Nina's worked on actually total synthesis and methodology, so she has maybe a more well-rounded perspective. But like, when you start in a specific field, you are kind of usually pigeonholed to continue in that specific field. And I brought that up before. So people out there who are doing methodology or similar work to what you're doing, who aren't really able to kind of like, put in practice total synthesis in their own like kind of research, I feel like that podcast is going to be really helpful for them because they'll be able to get some advice from, faculty members who do total synthesis on like their perspectives of retrosynthesis, and they can still advance that learning if they want to. That's something I was really hungry for when I was in grad school, but I didn't necessarily get a chance to really put it into practice in my own dissertation research. So I think there's some really awesome utility there and learning opportunities.
And very briefly, that I think personally, and maybe I'm wrong, okay? If I'm wrong, let me know. But I feel like there's a lot of information online dedicated to undergraduates. And I feel like there's not that much information online dedicated to graduate level, either whether it be the education content. So things like learning how to do total synthesis or retrosynthetic analysis or things like that. I feel like there's not enough content online that somebody who's thinking about going to grad school and learning what you're actually doing, like what you would be thinking about on a day-to-day basis, I feel like that's not available unless I'm wrong. But I feel like what you're talking about, the synthesis workshop and the podcast that you've been doing, that's a really nice niche that I definitely think needs to be filled. So I definitely think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And to contextualize, like, of course, there are resources out there. Like you'd read a book essentially, but like there aren't things, speaking to Nina's point, modernized information about it the same way that there is modernized information about undergraduate level topics, because you don't see those things digitized, you don't see these things in video format as much. And I feel like right now the way science communication is moving, speaking back to science communication, is obviously things are going into different formats, such as podcasts, such as YouTube lectures, such as Zoom education or Zoom lectures and stuff like that. So like, evolve, like matching the pace of essentially how communication is evolving is something that all, I think, subjects are struggling with, but science in particular, I think what we are used to, we can kind of speak on a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because the other thing about total synthesis is, like, honestly, like at the end of the day, like the more you do, the better you get at it. Like you just need to sit down and just do it. Like there's just no other way around it.
Yeah.
And talking with, I think, the experts though about like bringing them a disconnection or whatever you're planning them to sit down and be like, actually, this probably wouldn't work for this reason, is actually extremely insightful. I think that's what's really, and I think that's really what's missing. I think
huge learning opportunities there.
Yeah, huge like trial and error type thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's it'll be coming out soon.
Great, yeah. I love that for you. Okay, we're gonna talk about science communication and we're going to do our
No.
best. We're going to do our
After
best to do it.
40
Because
minutes.
we have to talk about
Yeah.
we have been talking a little bit about it.
Can I pose a
Go
question
ahead,
to you guys
sorry.
on science communication?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised journal articles aren't already podcasting people. I don't know. Like how, like to me, like the fact that like Science and like Nature or Jax, like how do they not have their own podcast yet?
I agree. Well, Jax is
Are
actually.
they?
But I love that. That is such a great question. Why
aren't
they?
Because I've had Paul Chiric before, and I was talking to him about it. If you guys have never talked to Paul Chiric is like one of the best people. He's so cool. Anyway, but he's the editor in chief, I think, of Organic Metallics, and like I don't know. I love to get his perspective on this because like he is kind of a forward thinking guy, I think, anyway. But yeah, I think the way I see it going is peer review. I think is already like kind of pro bono, isn't it? I think like
it is.
At least when I talk to Brad, like he gets people ask him to review his articles to be published or whatever, right? So I think that's
and
right.
Don't worry, PIs will ask their graduate students to review it for them.
Oh man,
if they don't have the
they
time.
Will.
Did not know that.
We can't speak to this ourselves.
Okay,
but we know it's happening.
But the way I see it going though is like if professors are already doing pro bono work to review, right? Why not like? Well, because I guess things like chem archives and bioarchives, I think, are just kind of gonna take a foothold and like really start to launch itself.
For sure. And
then I just think video podcasting will just take over. Like I just don't see a reason why like you publish the chem archives or bioarchives or whatever, the free platform, and then you do an episode online and just put it out there, and then who gives a fuck about Jax and Nature? And I don't think that'll ever actually change, but that's kind of my hope. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I think the only caveat to that is that because the chem archives and bioarchives are not reviewed, I think there still needs to be a mechanism for getting it peer reviewed, because there is stuff that you can put in the chem archive or bioarchive that is not up to standards. And as much as I hate like talking about what the impact of science is, peer review is still important to ensure that the well done science is being highlighted.
I agree. And there's no way really around that.
As much as I hate thinking about impact factor and, people talking about top journals compared to other journals and, all of how I don't want to get into that. But yeah, I do think that we still need to have some sort of metric to show that something is trusted, like peer review.
I love papers. This is not to say I'm not a fan of papers. I love papers. I love the format of a journal, like as a way of like really, again, peer review, hopefully being trustworthy and all of that. I do think, to speak to Aidan's point, it would be excellent to do kind of after like something has been accepted, to do a supplementary kind of video of kind of like peeling back the curtain a little bit, either from the PI or from the graduate student or whoever's working on that project, to be a representative of the work, and then really go through, maybe even just going through the figures and being like, hey, so we started this project, and almost kind of being like a supplementary format so that people can get that information through a different format other than the standard format that we've already been so accustomed to. That's been like this for like a million years, right?
I totally agree. I think too that doing it on the video, like having a video supplement to a paper, would be useful also because it would be more accessible to more people. And even though it may be too advanced for, lay people, it would be more accessible if they wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So,
I once I have publishable, because once I have my stuff published, like I do plan on like bringing it to a video. Like I think it'd be fun. So like, I see it going in that direction. And I do agree that like, a couple months ago, it got published in like, was it like Physics Archive? It was like a room temperature supermagnet or something like that. It was just like, what?
I think I saw that, or I saw like the aftermath of that.
Yeah, it was funny. It was just really funny. And
whoa,
like no one could reproduce it, but you will get things like that sometimes, I think. But yeah, I think it is important though to kind of peel back, peek behind the curtain a little bit, because people always write in a way that make it seem like they had this vision.
Mhm.
Like that's how a lot of discoveries are made.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, what I've seen this on Twitter before, and people usually shut it down, but I've seen people talk about we should have a journal of failures, or because I know I had a failed project in graduate school, and I would love to have had an opportunity to talk about it. I mean, of course, there's something to be said about IP and, you know, somebody taking that and then doing it better than you did or whatever. But I do think it would be interesting for people to talk about the things that failed and then gain insight from other people about how they might make it better, or just to show the work that you did, because you put so much work into things in grad school that don't always work.
Right.
I
actually can attest this a little bit, because I like my first year, I was working on like iron catalyzed Suzuki coupling reactions. And I could tell you firsthand, it's extremely difficult to get these reactions to work with iron in an sp2 fashion. There's a lot of work right now in like sp3 sp2 coupling for iron, but sp2 cross coupling is extremely hard for iron to do in Suzuki coupling fashion. And like I put a year into this work, and for all of it to just basically just kind of be sitting around right now, nothing to do with it, because there's nothing that really can be done at this point. You know, it's just the way it is. And like I would love to just be like, here's everything that I tried. Feel free to, and like this might be a bit niche because I'm part of the iron catalysis community, but you know, like I just think that would be like, it'd be great if I could just put that all out there in like a journal and be like, here's everything that I tried. Feel free to give this a shot to anyone. I put that out there, you know? But
the truth is, you could write a perspective on iron catalyzed, like on the challenges associated with iron mediated Suzuki couplings. And I think that there is something there. I mean, for the average graduate student to spend time doing that is obviously going to be challenging, and you would need the support of your peers as well as the faculty member that you're with in order to do something like that. But I think that would be a very interesting format to put some of those failures in, because then you can frame it as like, oh, you know, I've tried this. You can go over kind of how Suzuki couplings are, give a brief intro, go over the current reactions that do work very well, or the current metals that work very well. And then you can dive into iron, and you can, because you've thought about it a lot, I think you have a very interesting perspective on it. And then you can end it with, you know, these are the current challenges in iron catalysis. And until we can find a way to get over these challenges, we won't be able to do it. And that has to do with, and what I want to tie into is the balance between scientific communication and ownership and crowdsourcing the problem. Because if we really had the goal of solving a problem, we would be comfortable with other people solving it for us, or other people solving it in a better way than we do. We wouldn't have an issue with that. But because a lot of your career depends on having individual ownership or individual advances made in a specific thing, you know, we're less likely as a community to crowdsource a problem like that. Because for you to put it out there, for instance, and you're like, okay, I'm going to leave iron catalysis, that means you're comfortable with somebody else looking at the challenges that you've identified and then going, oh, I know how to do that, and then publishing later on it. You'd have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of people are okay with that.
Yeah. I agree. And it's dicey too, because in order for professors to get funding, like they have to be the ones who like, let's say, or discover an idea or whatever the case may be, you know? So, and I just don't know how you get around. You really just can't get around that. Like they need the funding. So I get it. Man, I don't know. It's the gatekeeping of information sometimes is just, it kind of sucks, but I get it though. Cause the way we've kind of functioned, this machine is just, it is what it is now, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's important to have conversations about how it might be changed for the better, because for instance, like things being open access I think that is such a huge step that people are making. I know at least in Europe, we're actually, I need to fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure everything needs to be open access in Europe at some point in the next couple of years so that everybody can actually access the papers. So a lot of the papers that I look at in my job, like they're open access already. Because why are we gatekeeping? Why do you have to pay $45 for an article that somebody else wrote where that author isn't even getting a cut?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I think
overhead.
Overhead.
What's crazy
It's
is
always the overhead.
what's crazy is that like a lot of people like, you know, promote their science, but like, I mean, don't you want to be like, you know, don't you want to be like promoting it to everybody? Like, cause we kind of like, it's so like funneled to just like the universities. But like if someone like wanted to like learn science, I don't even know how you could get access to the journal. Like obviously you can go through Sci-Hub, I guess, but like someone would have to like I don't know how people can like learn.
You have to
science.
buy it.
Yeah, you'd have to buy Nature. You'd have to buy Springer. You'd have to buy subscriptions to these journals. So
I think the business, yeah.
Go ahead.
Continue your thought.
Nah, that's pretty much it.
I guess one possible solution that I can think of, and here, this is a good example of the three of us, we are identifying a problem in science communication. And if anybody's listening to this and has a better idea, please feel free to really, you know, to go after it. But one possible solution that I see is kind of like, why not move towards, instead of like this, you know, right now magazines and newspapers are on the subscription model, and any magazine and newspaper that isn't on a subscription model is usually getting revenue from advertisement. You know what I'm saying? Because they exist. There are newspapers out there that you can just get for free. And there are also, you know, that they might not be as credible as something like the New York Times to some people, because they think the New York Times just has more credibility, but they're not, you know, paywalled. And I wonder if there's a particular, maybe a hybrid model that, you know, journals can switch to, or maybe some journals are already implementing, where instead of doing it as like kind of like a subscription fee, just, you know, use advertising the same way that like you can stream shows, for instance, for free on certain platforms. You just have to watch ads.
Yeah.
That's the way that
really
they're
interesting.
themselves, you know, and you can pay the subscription fee if you want to do it with no ads. That's one. I mean, I hate advertising. Like, listen, I hate advertising as much as the next person, but I do think that like, I mean,
it
get
has to
that
be self-sustaining. Like, there has to be self-sustaining. I get it. Then,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I wanted to say is the problem with open access currently too is that in order to publish in an open access journal, you have to pay for your article to be in the journal. And so that the PI or the university, somebody has to pay the journal for that journal to be open access. And in fact, I remember when I was writing my dissertation, I actually didn't make my dissertation open access because it was going to cost me $250 to make it open access. And I just didn't have that money as a poor graduate student who was moving at the time. Like I couldn't do it. So I did traditional publishing. So thinking about where the cost, like who has to pay that cost, is also a really important question. And I feel like advertisements, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. I do hear you, where like, things need to be peer reviewed. So like, I'm not like as much as I would love for information to be free, in order for it to be sustaining, like people got to get paid to review these things. It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
Like people have to get paid. And if you want good science, then you have to have initiative for people to actually like care about the review and like actually like making good science. So it's a very delicate balance, but yeah, a subscription or the advertisement is be a great idea. I think
people would hate. I think that the scientific community might find it really controversial, but the truth be told, most schools are already paying these journals anyway for access, so it wouldn't change their model, and most of the people who are in science probably won't actually have to see the ads. But if we're considering the average person out there who really wants to see a science article or a Nature article without actually having to pay the subscription fee, that might be a possible one solution to consider if they're not already considering it.
I want to look up,
because that could be.
I'm going to look up right now. How much is it to subscribe to Nature, or like subscribe to Springer? Because like you think about it, right? I pay what, $12 a month for like Disney Plus and Hulu, right? Like why?
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. So like, or whatever I think it's like $12 a month, right? Or something like that. Whatever. It's like $12 for Max, $12 for Netflix, whatever. All right. So why? Okay, get your Springer Journal subscription, $8.25 a month. Okay, that's actually not bad. All right, I take it back. I thought it was much more expensive than that.
Well, that's crazy because buying a journal article is $50.
Really? Oh wait, so maybe I have this wrong then. I don't know. How does it?
Well, I don't know. So basically, because my job, all I do is read papers. That's all my job is. So I'm constantly reading papers. And so it'll be like 30, 45, up to $50 to get a journal article.
I think
if
you're
you don't
right.
have
Yeah.
access to it.
Yeah.
But maybe because the subscription fee, maybe because they're getting it monthly and they're not getting that many people buying it for 50. I don't know. I have no idea what how their pricing works.
I was just saying, I would love to see a price breakdown. I actually don't know. Because you're right. Like, if I didn't have access to, like, through UH, I have seen, like, if you want this article, it's like $45 or something like, but it's like, what the?
Which also, like, I think it really stunts innovation too, because I worked at a small company before I went to graduate school, and I still had access to journals from UCSD because I was at UCSD while I was working there. And so I was able to access the journal articles that they didn't have access to. And so I would let them look at the journal articles. I don't know if that's illegal. I hope that's not illegal. But, like, I had a license, so we were using it. And if you don't have access to those articles, or if people who are startups would have to pay for the licenses, and that's expensive. So I don't know. It's all fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to promote, like, the next generation of scientists, like, like high schoolers or like people in undergrad, like, obviously, like, undergrads would get it through their university, but still, I don't know. We just need a bigger incentive for people to go read these things and not just kind of, I don't know. That's my opinion on it, but I don't know.
And also consider the fact, though, that, like, a lot of people who will ultimately go into grad school do, they might take a year off or 2 years off between undergrad and grad school. And if they want to keep up with the literature and they're graduated, they might lose their access. And then it's, that sets them back. So I think we've identified some issues. I think the wider community probably agrees that there's something going on with science communication in terms of how quickly they're able to pivot to these new things. I'd love to speak to somebody who is an actual editor right now, who's engaged in these decision makings at Science or Nature, and kind of like really understanding the financial challenges that they're facing in terms of getting to that point. Because I'm sure there's a reason why they're not doing it.
Right.
And it's most likely financial. But, I agree with Aidan that we're poised for a change of some sort.
The only, like, this is a devil's advocate point that I don't think that this means that we should gatekeep the information, but something that I've seen, at least on TikTok, is one issue with, like, people who are not experts in the field reading scientific articles. Sometimes they don't draw the right conclusions because they don't have the appropriate background information to be able to understand what they're reading. And it can be very dangerous if it's like medical articles or things related to biology, nutrition, those kinds of things. Because I see that all over TikTok. There's people who are like, let me cite my sources. And somebody who's educated in the field will read it and they'll say, you are not analyzing this data correctly. You are not drawing the correct conclusion. Now you're going on the internet and you're spreading misinformation. And so I don't think it's something that we should gatekeep. I don't think we should gatekeep science from the general community. But I think that we, as scientists who understand the material, need to be better at communicating that material to people all over the world in a way that they understand. And that's what I think is so important about science communication. It's breaking it down so that the people who are not experts can understand the advances that we're making. And like, I want to repeat, I don't think we should gatekeep scientific information from the general population, but I think that there is something to be said about experts digesting that information and producing it for the public.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. I think I'm personally willing to take the good with the bad, though. Because, like, there are people on the internet who are like, yeah, we have flat Earth, and there's how many flat Earthers out there? So it's like, what can you do? What can you do with these people? Like, it's just like, there's nothing more you can do. So if people have a voice, they're gonna put misinformation out there. It is what it is, and that's kind of that's a risk I would be willing to take. But I don't know.
I mean, just to address that challenge, Nina, I think that right now podcasters, as well as bloggers, whatever you want to call them, they are bridging that gap right now. Actually, a lot of the podcasts that I feel like that is the role, I think, of this kind of format in future science communication is, on one hand, I wish journals are a little bit more open access in that there's not a paywall, and, you know, maybe there's something to look at in the financial model. On the other hand, this second issue just is a slightly different issue of kind of like, okay, well then yes, but at the, you know, people who are writing papers are people who are usually very high level researchers that are producing this kind of content, and they're going to communicate their content in a way that isn't going to be amenable to your typical non in the field person. So podcasters, scientific communication, like a whole sector of science communication is about how to communicate that. People with science backgrounds who are trying to think about how to communicate certain things to people who are not at the level of like a PhD level researcher. That's their arena, you know, and that's the job that they've been, I think that's essentially the role that they really need to work in. And, you know, thinking about that, I feel like, you know, there's some really awesome podcasts out there on Spotify that I think do talk about like new research and science developments that people can have access to if you don't know about them already. And then, you know, there are certain blog formats such as In the Pipeline, which I feel like, you know, I think that's still a little advanced. Like Derek, I think, still talks about things in a really advanced way, but I think it's still less intimidating to read something like that than maybe a research paper right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree.
Something I want to start doing is I definitely want to do, I've talked to Andy McNally about this. I want to start doing like once a month, I'll do like, the series would be called Papers That I Like. It's literally just me like talking about papers that I like. And there's really no like, but what I'm wondering is, I don't know how copyright works. I don't know if I have to make my own figures, you know, like
I have no idea. When I was in my postdoc, I was considering doing a similar thing. Like what I wanted to do was kind of similar to what you were saying, actually, about total synthesis, taking total syntheses and explaining what the disconnections were and why those disconnections were made. But I didn't know about the copyright either. So I was like, I don't know if I can do that.
I might just do it and see what happens, honestly. Like, because I feel like that journals would want their stuff to be out there. I don't know. That's the sense I get.
I don't know.
I'll take a risk and see what happens.
It seems like it shouldn't be an issue. And I mean, what are they going to do? Sue you? I don't know.
Maybe
but like, you know, is it?
You get
how much they'd have to prove how much revenue that you're gaining from something like that. And I don't know if that's really easy to prove, you know, because they would actually need to demonstrate losses.
Yeah.
Also consider that a lot of papers that are funded through the NIH and NSF are technically open access. At least the paper, like at least the figures are. So you're usually safe in terms of a lot, because a lot of the research is funded through NIH. So
I think as long as you're talking about it in like a positive light, I don't see why they wouldn't want that like kind of free advertising. And honestly, like
I think so too. I think that should be. I think it's fine. Sound. Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think you two have identified, you know, two pretty big issues right now in the face of scientific communication. And I'm just curious as to what other people have to say about that as well. Specifically people who are working in journals. You know, I don't think there are probably a lot of behind the scenes people working in journals that aren't necessarily the editors that like make a lot of decisions too, that we just don't get to really interface with as much. Since the editors are typically like, you know, faculty members somewhere. Right.
Yeah. When I talk to professors about it, when I'm like off the cuff, I'll be like, you know, why are journals so expensive? They'll kind of give me, you know, an answer like, oh, they just want more money. And honestly, it's got to be much more nuanced than that. Like, I just refuse to believe that these people at the top are like in it for the money. I don't know. Maybe that's my optimistic impression of it, but there has to be something else like going on, I think, financially.
I mean, I do think that, to be fair, like, I think you're right that there is way more behind the scenes than people are willing to admit, because the cost of creating any type of content, as I'm sure we all are aware, it takes hours, it takes people's time. And there's a lot of work that goes into creating a journal and maintaining a journal. So I think it does cost some amount, but my question is, are journals are they nonprofits or are they for profit? I have no idea.
I don't know.
They're for profit,
right?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know, because then there's the conversation about like predatory journals, but like, really, aren't all journals predatory on some way? But because
I don't know.
I don't think they should be for profit, because why would our journals be for profit. I don't know. Anyway, that's just my little.
That's a major conversation about how media should operate in a capitalistic society. That's the conversation that you're asking, in the same way that news channels are for profit, right? Like, so that's why people get so up in arms about what news channel they're receiving their news from, because most people now, it's a divisive topic, and then the press has to be free, but how free is free?
Who is controlling the press?
Right.
But also, it's interesting because the taxpayers are paying for the NIH and NSF grants. The grants are being used by universities. The results of that work is being published in journals that have a paywall. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, but something doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good point too. Those NIH and NSF, they come from taxes. So I don't know.
Which is why NIH is open access. Like, they require the articles be open access because it is from taxpayer money. It's government money.
Can I ask something to you guys?
Of course.
So I kind of want to, because I'm sure you guys have talked about this in maybe your first episode, but I definitely want to hear more about why you guys started your podcast, because you guys are kind of giving authentic stories, I think, and your own personal experiences. And so I'd love to hear, again, we talked about this, to put yourself on camera and a microphone to actually do it is it's a tough thing, and you really got to be brave about that. So what was why now, or why? And I'd love to hear that for myself personally. I would say, what's the feedback been so far? It's love to hear that.
Nina, why don't you go first, and then let's you know what, this will be a fun experiment. You say something and I'll say something and see if we agree.
Well, okay, because if we're gonna be fully transparent, this is what I think happened. Okay, to be fully real, because I don't think we've talked about this. So Anna knows that I have a lot of feelings, and I kind of came out of grad school and my postdoc having a lot of feelings about academia. I wanted to go into academia, and then I kind of drifted away. And from my recollection of our conversation about starting the podcast, it was like, Nina, I really feel like you need somebody to bounce your ideas off of in order to form a coherent sentence. So I feel like we should start a podcast, and we could do this because I know how much you want to put this out into the ether. So let's just do it.
I remember it that way as well. I think that that is the realest way of answering the question. But specifically, the other reason why I felt like it would be worthwhile to do it, because selfishly, it was we're best friends. We're going to have fun just talking to each other. We were long distance best friends back then. We're still long distance now. This was kind of an excuse to just keep connected and, continue to hang out and continue to have conversations. That's a very personal reason. I think on a broader level, what I found missing in the overall science communication podcast kind of sphere is there's a lot of information. So I love that a lot of the science podcasts are about science. I think that's awesome because we're all here because we're interested in science. And I didn't feel like that was a vacuum necessarily in terms of people attempting to try and communicate the research or people attempting to communicate the science. I mean, TED Talks, for instance, great way to communicate, large themed ideas. There's a lot of ways to do that. But I was thinking really about okay, we're handling that. What about the parts of what we do that isn't science related? Can we do a podcast about that? Because that makes up a large part of our lives too. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, grad school, academia, what I'm currently doing now, it's not always about the science. I'm sorry. And as you get higher and higher and higher in your education, the science isn't the hard part in understanding or exposing yourself to. It's actually the stuff that's kind of underneath it all, and that's kind of and it's not always negative. Some of it is really positive. One thing that Nina and I've discussed is we don't want our podcast to just sway into the negative and just be us complaining about things. But we feel like, I felt like sometimes in grad school, am I the crazy one? Am I crazy? Or is something happening right now that no one is really acknowledging, no one's really talking about, am I the crazy one? Like, I felt like that a lot. And so I wanted to maybe provide a voice for people in the community to talk about situations like that they couldn't talk about, for instance, on a podcast that was more like, I'm talking about my research. I'm
Yeah.
talking about, the hypotheses that led me to think a certain way, because we're human. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's the research intellectual side of us, and then there's the very human side of us. And Nina and I wanted to talk about that because I think we do, most of us do the intellectual science part pretty well, like, or at least we're attempting to, and we put a lot of time into it. That's what graduate school classes are, right? That's what research is. But there's not a lot of focus on the human side of things and how we're developing as, a collaborative human society.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to talk more broad strokes and more kind of like what I feel like what I want the podcast to offer, that's kind of what I want it to offer. Do you agree, Nina?
So I think that's totally fair. And I totally agree with that being the premise of our podcast. I also think that when I got to grad school, there was so much that I didn't know. And there were so many things that I felt like I was learning along the way that nobody was willing to say out loud, or it was always behind closed doors, or it whispers like, oh, people aren't going to tell you this, but you should know this. And Anna and I both have since moved on and are in our careers. And we feel on some level that we have a little bit less to lose about talking about those things that people are not willing to talk about in graduate school for fear of, retaliation is not allowed in any way, but it's still something that people fear. So we don't really have that fear anymore. So we're willing to have these hard conversations about the human side of research and science and academia. And that's our goal. It's really like, if we can help even one person feel heard or seen or understood in this very tumultuous time, that's kind of what my goal is, at least.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think what you guys are doing are great, because like I talk to professors about like the research, and I get to know them on a one-on-one basis, but like there is still a missing gap between, like, I would say, the human side of it. Absolutely. Because I feel like people always say like, yeah, like you can, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain graduate school to people that aren't in graduate school. Like my friends back at home who aren't in graduate school, I don't even know how to explain it to them. You know what I mean? Like there's no person I go to talk to about these kind of things,
Yes.
And the amount of research that it's a very fine balance between like the research I do, which I love, like, but to deal with my emotions too, it's like, and to be 24 in a new city, and to be like there's just people, so many things and I can't even imagine being an international student. Like if I had to go to a different country,
oh my God,
like, so there's just so many human aspects of graduate school that people aren't talking about. And so
yeah,
I'm really, I'm sure a lot of people are grateful for it, because I also like hearing your experience, like of like not, stepping away from your postdoc, you're getting, Nita, you're getting married. Like those are just real things that people are going through that I think, people really appreciate,
that nobody talks about.
I know.
People don't talk. I mean, to be fair, like there are professors, like I did have a one-on-one conversation with a professor at UC Davis asking her advice for why did she do a postdoc? What made her decide to go into academia? She, and things even like, did she want to start a family? When was she planning on doing that? How did she navigate all of these choices while also trying to get a career in academia? And it was a really great conversation. And I think we're planning on talking about that at some point in our podcast. But
look forward to that time. Those
are not commonly discussed, right? So
I gotta be honest, like one last thing I was gonna say is like I can't like as a male, I don't really get this, but as a female, like if you were gonna do, okay, let's say you go to grad school right out of undergrad, by the time you're going to graduate school, you're 25, 26. Okay, you want to go into be a professor. All right, that's 2 years of postdoc or whatever. So you're like 28, at 29. Least. You're 28, 29, something like that. Let's say you also want to start a family. So like, like that's a real topic. Like, to have all of that figured out by your time you're 32, 33, you're trying to get tenure. Like, man, like it's super admirable, people that make it that far. Like, I'm like, wow.
Actually, Sarah Reisman, I don't know what conference this was at. I think it might have been EWOC, which is Empowering Women of Organic Chemistry, if people are not aware. But she actually talked about that because she actually had kids pre-tenure and everybody told her it was an awful idea. But she was like, well, I want to, and I'm going to, and I know it's going to be hard and I'm willing to take that risk. And obviously she's very successful, has tenure, and also had kids pre-tenure, which is wild, but it's true. It really does take a toll. And this is not that funny, but when I was TAing at some point in grad school, there were students that were actually making fun of our male professor for having a 15-year-old daughter when he was like quite old. And I looked at them and I was like, I don't think you understand how long it takes to get a PhD and how long it takes to get tenure and how much that takes out of your life. And yeah, okay, so maybe he was 40 when he had his kid. So what? Like he had so many obstacles that he had to jump over before he even got there. And I think I gave them a little bit of perspective that day, but
there you go.
That it's not even like, of course for women, it's awful, but it's everybody. I mean, you know, everybody's losing their 20s to graduate school.
And that's also, we spoke about that a lot when we were starting our podcast, because that's what we were chatting the most about. It's like, oh, because once you're on the other side, when you're in it, you don't realize it because you're so busy. You're thinking about work. You have a goal in mind, but once you achieve that goal, I promise you, everybody is going to get on the other side of that, look back and go, okay, I just spent all of my 20s in grad school. Now what? And that's something that I feel like it's been echoed, not just by, it is scary. I mean, you know, sorry, that's what you're headed for. However,
we're there.
We're hoping
I turned
that
32 in 3 days. So
I just turned 30, and like I hope that we make people feel less alone, you know. And I feel like the reason why it's hard to talk about in academia when you're in it is because you are always trying to front something. When you're in academia, there's always something, a message that you're trying to give. Even professors are like this, right? Like, yes, professors are going to talk about having kids, but they have to talk about it in a certain way. They're not going to talk about, they're going to pick and choose what they're going to say, right? When they're talking to their specific audience, because that's their job. And I get that. But can we provide a platform? Can we provide a space where we don't have to worry about that, where we're just talking like, you know, like you're our friends, or we're just chit-chatting at brunch about this topic and being as real as we possibly can, you know, without the constraints of that. And we'll get into this later, there are a lot of issues. The big secret of all of this is that I heard this from an actress, I think during a Hollywood roundtable. It's like, the truth of the matter is that you can do it all. I think it was Oprah or something was talking about this, because she has done it all. Okay. She was saying you can do it all, but you cannot do it all at the same time.
I think that is the biggest reality.
Or Shonda Rhimes, or I don't remember. I know she which context.
Talked about it.
You can't do it all, be it all at the same time. That's what they don't tell you. Yeah. When you're in your 20s, you're really optimistic. You go in and you're like, no, I can do it all. I can do it all. I got this. I'll just kill everything, you know, and like, I'll slay everything. But it's like very, I think it's very important to keep that in mind so that you're not too hard on yourself. Yeah. If you drop a few balls.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on this, but like, obviously, like my friends, because I'm 24 now, but like I recently graduated 3 years ago college, and like a lot of my friends got their job or whatever, like right out of college, and they have like big boy jobs or big girl jobs, and like I'm being paid like $40,000 a year, and it's like, well, and so like nice. I see them on social media a lot, they're out, and so a part of me is like, damn, I wish I were there having fun, but at the same time though, like I'm very grateful for what I do now, like I'm very grateful. So like I know I'm building towards something that'll be worth it for me personally.
You are.
So
you are, absolutely.
Yeah. So
navigating that is really hard. I know I felt the same way as well. Cause you know, you're like, I think I got my PhD when I was 29. So like when I'm like 27, 28, people are like, oh, you're still a student? Like, oh, you're a student.
People don't get that too. Like, you know, if you're still taking classes, I'm like, no, I'm not taking classes. Like,
no, I'm not. Exactly. And that's what you were saying earlier. It's very hard to explain graduate school to people because you're really not a student. And that is a conversation that we are planning to have too, the student versus employee conversation. And all of that. But yeah, I feel like you feel left behind. And Anna and I are huge Grey's Anatomy fans. I don't know if you've watched it. Have you seen Grey's Anatomy ever?
I know what it is, but I never seen a look at the episodes.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to. But one of the things that I really love about that show is that because medical school is very similar, you do your 4 years of undergrad, you do your 4 years of medical school, and then you have to go into residency. And you're still, for instance, my cousin actually, I think she's done at this point with her residency, but you're not a real doctor yet until you actually go through your whole residency path. And so it follows them through residency when they're still making and your boards.
And your boards.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're making mistakes, like, losing their 20s to this experience as well. And so I feel like we resonated a lot with that while we were in grad school too, because it kind of makes you realize that like it's a different world than just going into a job.
And that's a reference you can kind of bring up to your friends, and then they'll kind of maybe understand it a little bit.
All my guy friends that watch Grey's Anatomy, I'll have to bring it up to them.
Or just tell them that you're just Walter White, Breaking Bad, and like that's they can take away that.
What's funny? I have yet to see Breaking Bad. Have you guys seen Breaking Bad?
Me neither. I've never watched it.
Everyone keeps telling me to watch it. It makes me not want to watch it. Like, bro.
Me too. I'm the same way.
Okay, yeah, it's probably overhyped at this point. But
no, I believe it's a good show. I believe it's a great show, but like, people keep telling me to watch it. It makes me not want to watch it.
Don't you hate it when other people try to tell you what to do? I hate it.
Anna hates it. She super hates it. But
I just have an innate instinct to just say no when people like try to ask me to do something and I'm just like, but if it was my own idea, I would do it. Like if I moseyed along and nobody said anything to me and I found the show, I'd be like, oh yeah, let's give this a listen.
What's the meme where it's like, when you live at home, it's like, I'll be nice, I'll clean the dishes for my mom, but then she comes home and they're like, can you clean the dishes? You're like, fuck.
And she asks me.
Yeah, like, no, I'm not cleaning.
Exactly how I am.
I'm not cleaning the dishes. No.
I was planning on cleaning my room until you came by and said my room was messy and I need to clean it up.
Right. No, I hear that.
That's so funny.
I agree. But yeah, I mean, I hope that, we're able to offer that on our podcast and just bring a little bit of human element to it. And we probably won't be able to do that with like big name professors because again, they have an image. They have like they have something that they really need to protect in their own brand or whatever it is. And I get that. So I think we're going to try and fulfill another niche of it and be like, hey, this is the other side and humanize things a little bit more. And I wonder what that's going to do to the community. I wonder if people are interested in that. How's the feedback been? What would you say?
Well, I think I feel like we didn't expect people to be like as positive about it as they have been. Wouldn't you say? I don't know. I feel like it's been going pretty well so far. A lot of people
early days.
Yeah.
We're still very small. Like, we're not going to front about that. Like we have like 100 something followers on Instagram. But I was telling Nina that honestly, even if one person watches our podcast, like one new person, because there are people who like obviously are in our lives and they're just going to try and support us and they're going to do the thing,
like my
and
mom.
they try to hype us up, like Nina's mom.
Biggest supporters.
I have a friend who listens. I love her, by the way. This is a shout out because she might be listening to this. Jessie, thank you so much for listening to this when you are doing your thing. And she has a new baby right now as well. So I know like she's up at all hours of the night and sometimes she'll just be listening to our podcast while she's like, taking care of the baby. So thank you so much, Jessie. You're the best. But if any new person finds the podcast and like is just unassociated with us and they listen, like if it was just even one viewer, I'm satisfied. That fulfills my quota in terms of what we're able to offer.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I think what you guys are doing is really great. Like even your stories resonate with me, but honestly, like I look around and like I look at podcasts like Call Her Daddy, right? It's like how is this is this show? And like I think you guys being able to like to speak to, I think you guys have like a women's touch to it. I think that there's something there that that a lot of women in academia like are looking for right now, and that's my impression.
Thank you.
Like I think a lot of women graduate students, especially in STEM, like this is the kind of like content that they're needing, I think. I don't know if you guys speak to that a little bit. I've talked to like Mary Watson, who runs Ewok as well, about this.
Yeah.
And so I love Mary Watson.
Yeah, Mary's great.
I don't think she knows who I am, but I certainly know who she is.
We all know who she is, but does she know who we are?
Yeah.
That's what you strive to be.
Yeah.
Love Mary Watson.
Nina, do you want to go first about that in terms of like...
Sure. I think what I will say is that, being a woman in STEM, and we plan to talk about this in some way, and Anna and I have very different opinions on this, and so it'll be an interesting episode for sure. But, we had women like chemist day. I think it's like February 11th is International Day for Women in STEM or something like that. And we would have organized events at UC Davis. And I think being a woman in STEM, you kind of always have your guard up. You always have to be on. And I didn't realize how on I was all the time until I walked into this meeting room where it was like all women. There were men too, like allies that were supporting us as well. But walking in and people sharing their stories, and I just felt this weight lifted from me. And like, oh, wow, I don't need to just like be, on right now. We can talk very candidly about our experiences and they know exactly how we feel. So I definitely know that was something that I sought when I was in grad school. So I do hope that we can be that person to girls and women alike, or I mean, anybody, any of our community that would look up to us in any way. I mean, I don't know how much there is to look up to, but hopefully we can offer something to them.
You guys are doing it.
I feel like, to your point, Aidan, like it's very, why some people, like, I think that women in general have very complicated relationships with gender, like with their place in society, with gender norms. So like Nina and I can't really speak for everybody, but what I get the sense from in my experience is that I'm afraid that some women aren't willing to talk about the stuff that Nina and I are talking about because they might be like at a stage in their careers where if they're not talking about science, if they're not talking about their research, that they're somehow diminished because they don't know what they're talking about. Like I think about that sometimes with us, like, and that's maybe partially the reason why we didn't want to start a podcast just about the science, because number one, other people are doing it, but like in my head, I'm like, kind of like, I don't need to. I have a PhD. I have a degree. I did a postdoc. My work is out there. I have published work. If people are interested in who I am as a scientist, they can certainly see it. I hope that we can give people out there a safe space to explore these human sides of things without having to worry about how they're perceived around them, as like, because I feel like some people think that if you fixate on the human side of things, you're somehow lesser of a researcher, or like you're not as serious about the research, as if like if you went to grad school and you were truly serious about the research, you wouldn't care about all of this other stuff. You wouldn't care about the human stuff. And that's just not true. I think you can do both, right? You can care about the human side of things and also be hardcore about your research and love the research. You don't have to pick and choose.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's like saying I love the research so much that it's like you have to prove that you love the research so much. You love the research. Don't get me wrong. Okay, you're making $40,000 a year. That's how much you love the research.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't need to prove to anybody that you love the research. You've already made the decision. It's okay. Let go. Like think about the human side of things because we're all trying to grow. You can grow as a researcher and you can grow as a human. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And so with women, I feel like that's more of a sensitive issue because I think they're more maybe insecure about being perceived as somebody who, isn't as hardcore about the research. And maybe they are less willing to share these things, particularly if they're like the minority in their labs, right? Like they might not want to talk to certain people about certain things. And so we want to give them a place where they can talk about it, because, and explore it from a different platform, if they're not able to otherwise.
I do think on some level, the fact that we have already gotten our PhDs and we've demonstrated our abilities in science, that it makes it easier for us to have these conversations. Because I know that I know organic chemistry. I know that I know it and I can prove it. So I don't really feel like I need to prove it on this podcast because that's not what I think people need help with.
Yeah.
There's plenty of resources that's actually not true. I would love to talk about organic chemistry as well. And that's something that Anna and I have talked about. But for the podcast, like I think the value that we can provide is in the human side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
with your episodes you guys already have out, like I've resonated with them. And so when I'm at the bench top, I have your podcasts on, listening to your stories about like, leaving postdoc or whatever.
And that's so nice.
Like,
thank you.
I mean, it's, gotta give credit when credit is due. Like what you guys are doing is really awesome. And I think it's going to grow.
Well, we can, we know how much time people spend on their benches, and like you might not have the focus for like a synthesis podcast, for instance, while you're running a column, right? Like I know I wouldn't, like if I'm trying to do stuff in lab, like I might not have the focus or dedication to listen to an educational podcast, but sometimes you just want to like think about things or muse or philosophize, you never know. So hopefully we fill in that niche. Yeah, I know it's not a word, but let me be. Let me live my freedom.
We got vibes here.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Honestly, it does mean a lot because as well as we do that it's stressful. It's stressful to put yourself out there and, give people the opportunity to judge you. And
I welcome it.
You can't care.
I personally welcome it. I don't give a fuck, dude. Honestly, if people can come after me, I don't care. That's my own personal gripe with it. But yeah, look for it.
Yeah. So thank you. Honestly, that means a lot. Sorry.
The last thing I want to ask is then, how did you guys meet? How did this friendship start? Like what had this friendship start?
Let me answer. I will answer. So we talked a little bit about this in one of our episodes, but the story is that Anna joined my lab. Okay. She joined it late and she was sitting next to me. And at the time, like we were in a very funny part of our graduate career because she was very overzealous. And so I wasn't sure how I felt about her. There were things I was like, I don't know.
She straight up didn't like me. Straight up didn't like me.
And, in fact, she didn't invite me to this party, probably a month before she joined the lab. And I was like, so there were just some things going on, but then she ended up joining the lab and she was sitting next to me and I was like, okay, well, I guess we need to be friends. And she had no idea how I felt. She thought we were friends. And so we started.
Because we've been friendly this entire time. Like we were teaching together. We were in classes together. I would say hi to her. I felt like our vibes were correct. Okay. I came into this lab thinking, this is totally fine. Yeah. Nina's great. She seems like a chill person. I wasn't that close with her. Like we didn't hang out all the time, but I was like, she seems like a nice person. That was my perspective.
So basically she came in, I don't know at what point I confronted her to talk about the things that had bugged me, but we literally started just taking our NMRs together. We would go, we had to walk down 3 flights of stairs or go down the elevator. And anytime we would batch our NMRs and be like, okay, let's go down to the NMR room. And then we would eat lunch together. And then somehow we were literally attached at the hip by probably a quarter in.
That's awesome.
Maybe even a month in.
Codependency.
We were codependent. It was wild.
But I mean, it was because the reason why we started doing that also is because Nina and I are both very chatty, as you can tell. And we would get started on a topic or we would start having a conversation. And because we couldn't really stop it, neither of us wanted to leave the room to take the NMR.
Right.
So I would just wait for both of us to have to take the NMR. And actually, I'm sure our lab mates were super bothered by it because we were kind of we were laughing loud, talking loud. We didn't have a care in the world. But I think secretly they were just jealous that they didn't have a bestie in lab like we did. Because because if you did, and I know they were, because in the peak of our friendship, it was easy because we would stay late in labs. If you needed to stay late in lab, it would be a positive motivation to stay in lab longer because we just wanted to keep hanging out. Right. Yeah. So in that way, it actually really progressed our research really quickly.
I was the most productive when we were in the same room.
And our relationship was good. Yeah. And our relationship was good. We talk about this in a future episode about conflict management because we got into a big fight in our fourth year of grad school, which made it really hard to work. Yeah,
we actually don't talk about the actual fight, but we talk about our resolution.
We talk about how we dealt with it. We talked about kind of how we navigated around it and what we did. But in our first 2 years, I would say even in year 3, we loved working with each other. We would just, enjoy spending time in lab as a result of that. And that's why we also know how important it is that human things
Yeah.
can actually impact research, because you have to love being in lab to want to stay there, right? And the more you build a positive environment in lab, the better the research is going to be, because everybody is down to be in lab and everybody wants to be in lab. When it's negative, that's when things fall apart.
Yeah, you definitely. Yeah, last thing I'll say, I shout out to the Kara group. I actually love the people I work with. Like, if you have a shitty group, man, it's miserable to go in every day. But if you have a group that's like pretty sociable, you know, maybe you'll go out and get drinks once a week or whatever. You guys are an intramural team. I do that. Like, it makes graduate school much more enjoyable, honestly. And listen, sometimes like you too, sometimes you'll make lifelong friends, like literally. So it's one of the benefits.
Literally,
since our second year, two brain cells.
I was gonna say that 2 of my lab mates were my bridesmaids.
There you go.
That's all.
By our second year, we were telling my graduate student mentor at the time that like I could totally see Nina and I become like really old one day and be at the old people house and just still be arguing about something. Even there, we'll be arguing about science or something, because that's what we were doing in lab all the time. It is just one of those, you know, we got lucky. It's not something that like I think I can see with everybody, but we just got really lucky.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Crazy.
Love that. Love to hear that.
Yeah, it's it's funny to think about, but we got very lucky. Our lab experience, grad school experience, was actually the other thing that I will say about our podcast is that like we had pretty good experiences overall. I mean, obviously we should get into a fight and COVID happened in the middle of ours, so there was that. But overall, we had a really good experience until the end. And so I think having the perspective of people who had a good experience, plus us knowing people that had bad experiences, like we kind of have a good grasp of the kind of spectrum of experiences that people can have. So anyway,
I like to think of it as we socialized so you don't have to, because I know some people out there, they don't want to do all of that. They don't want to go through all of that. But like Nina and I, because we were kind of, I'm actually more introverted, but in grad school, I kind of made an effort to socialize with people. And like, I made that kind of as a personal goal. And I feel like because of that, we accumulated a lot of knowledge, a lot of like, you know, lived experiences that give us a perspective of grad school that maybe is different if people out there are a little bit more introverted, a little bit more, you know, shy about going into that kind of stuff. So yeah, we did that. We really did.
Yeah, we did. So what is the moral of our story?
Well, moral of the story is, for me, like if you're not having fun, change gears or you got to do something to change it up, I would say. Grad school is tough. It's a very tough place. It's a very tough place. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. So if you're not having fun, change gears, honestly. There's no shame at all, honestly. That'd actually be a fun future episode, people that kind of dropped out and to see, like, why. But, you know, I just, at the end of the day, listen, it's kind of corny. You only get one life. So, like, if you're not enjoying it, like, go pursue something that you want to enjoy, you know, honestly. That's my moral of the story, honestly. And if you got vibes like me, then life is good. So that's all.
And thank you for having me true to your vibes.
And thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Look forward to future
episodes. Thanks for coming and talking about your podcast and everything, your whole journey, because it is always interesting to talk to other people who are, what their paths were, and also somebody who's doing the same thing that we are, putting themselves out there and talking about science and everything that comes with being in chemistry. So thanks for being a part of the community. I'm glad we can be a part of the community together.
If I'm ever at a conference and you recognize me, like, come say hi. Like, we'll go.
No, we're gonna link up. No, we're friends now.
Yeah,
Aidan, we're friends now.
But I even mean for the viewers too. I even mean the viewers too. Like, honestly, like, come on, hang out.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know.
Okay, never mind. Not me imposing myself in Aidan's life. Like, yeah, we're gonna hang out.
Obviously,
we're friends now.
Obviously, we are friends. We are friends now.
If you're ever in the Boston area, feel free to link up for an ACS or something, whatever it is. I'm sure you're gonna get up here. Like, I'll be in the neighborhood and we can do like a whole like podcast meetup or whatever.
I've always wanted to do something like, I always want to do like a podcast live. Like, if I'm at a conference and like I'll just sit at a table and like I'll just be live with a camera and like I was like professors like walking by and like, yo, come on up, or student, come on up. I think that'd be really fun.
You'd be
would
an
be
excellent
cool.
moderator. Absolutely. We'll figure something out. Yeah. But I think the moral of the story for me is like also just kind of like do what Aidan did. You know, I think you started the podcast with a really good piece of advice, which is that if you want to do anything, if you want to make any content or whatever, just do it.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Just do it.
yeah, I'm sure you're facing a number of like reasons for why you shouldn't do it, but understand that if you do it, all of those reasons won't matter anymore and you're free. And so like liberate yourself. I don't know. Just do it. If you're thinking about doing it, join us.
Just do it.
Join us.
Yes.
Don't worry about that. Like honestly, like you will find your voice. Like you'll find it'll come, but just get started. And like you're your own biggest critic, honestly. Like just by putting yourself out there, people already appreciate it. So like people aren't gonna like I've never come across like a troll that is like criticizing everything I've done. I've only gotten positive feedback really. So like, you know, just do it. Honestly, just do it.
Especially in this environment, we're all grad students or academics. Nobody has time for that. No one has actual time to do all of the stuff that you're thinking about.
Like be a hater.
Yeah,
honestly.
be a hater. That's just not happening. Absolutely.
Agreed. My moral of the story is that science communication is very important. And so, like you guys said, if you have something to say, join us.
There you go. That's it.
All right. I think it's it.
We did it. Thank you so much,
right.
Aidan. This has been amazing. And honestly, we'll do future collabs in the future.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried. I'm not even worried about it.